Welcome, everybody, to the first of hopefully many photo slideshows presented by Notch 8 Photography. This one is called From Steel Rails to Shining Seas. As the name implies, we'll be taking a look at some railroad photos as well as some Jersey Shore photos. As a matter of fact, this whole presentation takes place in New Jersey. So without further ado, we're going to get started with our first event. And these photo slideshows are going to all focus on photo outings that I've taken um, recently and in the past. So this first event, Susquehanna Steam Strikes Back, actually happened this morning in Phillipsburg. The star of the show was this Chinese-built steam locomotive, number 142. Now, number 142 runs on the Delaware River Railroad, and it's owned and operated by the New York Susquehanna and Western Technical and Historical Society. They just completed a routine overhaul and inspection on the locomotive, and today was its first day back in service. And here it was actually crossing under two bridges. You only see the first one here. And those were former Lehigh Valley and Central Railroad of New Jersey railroad lines. Both of those railroads are no longer a thing. It's now one of those lines is operated by Norfolk Southern, but the other is totally abandoned to my knowledge. So I got in my car and I chased the train to multiple locations. And here I snagged it at River Road. Looks like that sign there could use a bit of TLC. Now, when I got to editing these photos a couple hours ago, I wanted to see how a couple of them would look in black and white. So this one I thought was quite nice in black and white. And there will be many other photos like this where I have the color version and then I have the black and white because I got a little bit like I really like the way the black and white was making some of my photos look, and we'll see more of that down the line. This was further up the road. Now, this railroad line is a little bit tough to take photos on because you're parallel to an active road, so you have to worry about cars and whatnot. But there was a little bit of a break in traffic here, and I was able to snag a nice three-quarter of the locomotive. This was later on. I ended up shooting two of the trains. They had four today, but this was the second train of the day, and I tried for another sweeping curve shot. And then here was the train pulling into Riegelsville, New Jersey, which is as far as they go. And that station is actually pretty new. I don't remember how new, but I remember they told me it was built recently. There it is in black and white. And then a vertical version of the shot, also in black and white. And then here was when I shot the second train. I went up on a little rock cut there with some other rail fans, and I shot the train looking down. And then here's from ground level. This was actually the first train from ground level. What they did was they had the steam engine pull the train to Riegelsville, and then they had a diesel locomotive on the rear end pulling the train back to Phillipsburg. Being that this was number 142's first run, they wanted to make sure everything was all fine and dandy, and should anything happen, they did have an extra engine to bring back the train if the steam engine broke down. And now we're going to the next event, which happened last week. Night at the Museum for a Day. Every year, the United Railway Historical Society of New Jersey hosts Museum for a Day. They're not an official museum, but they do have an open house once a year. Now, this night photo session that I attended took place the night before their Museum for a Day. And here's what we did. We had a nice lineup here of a couple of their passenger locomotives. Going from left to right, they have locomotive number 3372, 4083, and right there in the corner is number 4877. I don't know if I intentionally did this, but, and correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, I believe from left to right, it's newest locomotive to oldest. And I didn't even intend for that. But for these couple of shots, I focused on the 3372 and the 4083. Both of these are passenger locomotives. The 4083 is older. It's a streamlined diesel that was built in the 50s, I think. And before anyone asks, no, a toothpaste company did not sponsor rather, the paint scheme on that locomotive. The New York Central came up with that as an experimental paint scheme. They used to have one where it was a two-tone gray rather, if I could talk English tonight. It was a two-tone gray with a lightning stripe going across the car body. And that got a little bit expensive to apply to all their locomotives. So they tested this paint scheme. They did this in the Century Green, which is what you see now. Then they did one in black and one in gray. The green wasn't popular. And 3372 on the left is a model U34CH passenger locomotive. New Jersey Transit used these for a while before they transitioned to newer power in the 90s. And 3372 is the only preserved example, to my knowledge. I think there was one other, but I'm not sure what happened to it. One more look of the dynamic duo here. And here's the 4877. This is a streamlined GG1 electric locomotive. The Pennsylvania Railroad had a lot of these. 4877 used to be called Big Red. It used to also run for New Jersey Transit, and in its last days, it was painted in Tuscan red with the gold stripes. Even though it wasn't its original colors, it was very popular among the crew and rail fans. But the United Railway Historical Society repainted it to its original Brunswick green. Now, this long exposure was actually taken in between flash shots. What you saw so far were shots using the strobe flashes. My friend Steve Barry and his crew came and coordinated the event, and they had like 5 or 6 flash units. And we had our cameras set up on tripods, and they would yell 3, 2, 1, open. We'd open our shutters. They'd fire the flashes, and we'd get the exposure. But this was done in between the flash shots. This was actually when they were rearranging the flashes for the next photo opportunity. I did this 3 times. The first and third shot are the best, and this is the third shot where I kind of changed the angle a little bit, and I put a black and white filter on it. And the car in the foreground's an old Plymouth. The big draw for me for this event was this Conrail locomotive. New Jersey Transit has 5 Class GP40 locomotives, GP40 PH-2 and -2Bs, and they're all painted in the schemes of predecessor railroads. They just released the 5th one yesterday. But the 4th one is the Conrail Heritage Unit. It's painted in the bright blue with the can opener logo on the side there. Here's a vertical version of that shot, and they turn the marker lights off for that. We got hit by a little bit of rain, but we still made it work. This was our last photo opportunity of the night, and these 2 Jersey Central locomotives were staged side by side. The men you see on either side of the 1524 here are retired Jersey Central employees, so that was pretty cool that they came and did that for us. And they also posed here. The man on the ground is actually holding an original CNJ timetable. I got to talking to him after the event because I was doing a few more final long exposures. And he was showing me and my friends the timetable. Now, like I said, they have their open house around this time each year. And this year I didn't go, but last year I did. And New Jersey Transit has a shuttle service that takes you from Denville to Boonton to the event. Last year and this year, they had one of their heritage GP40s leading what is called the Boonton Scoot. And that's the shuttle. And it just so happened to be another Jersey Central Lines locomotive, number 4109. As you can see from the photos, the weather wasn't that great. It was actually pretty tough to get good shots last year when they had it. Quick note about the 4109 and the 4208, the Conrail engine. Both of those locomotives are original Central Railroad of New Jersey and original Conrail locomotives. So it's pretty cool to see them repainted into their historic liveries. Transit also sent a couple of their buses over last year, and they also sent their Erie Heritage locomotive, as you can see in the background. And I have two versions of this shot. I have this, and I also have this, which highlights the Jersey Transit disco stripe logo and the Erie diamond. And speaking of the Erie unit, here it is. This was the third. This was the third GP40 to get painted. There's the 4877 again. I'm realizing now Jersey Transit actually sent quite a bit of stuff last year. That locomotive on the far left is also theirs. The locomotive in the middle, the 4424, was actually donated to them. So the United Railway Historical Society owns the 4424 and the 4877. The 4550 was another visiting locomotive. One of the highlights of last year was the Vintage Vibe Tribe. Um, they're a retro-themed cover band, and I had the lead singer pose for me for a couple shots. I really like how her dress looks next to the pinstripes. The polka dots and the pinstripes go well together, in my opinion. Another one of my favorite shots from last year was the 4083, the toothpaste unit next to the 20th Century Limited car. Now that car, you could actually ride that car on select dates. I think now it's at the Finger Lakes Railroad. It's doing some fall foliage runs up there. But they used to take this on the Hudson line, and they used to actually have Amtrak pull them to Albany and back. Close up of the 20th Century Limited plaque. I put a black and white filter on it, but it didn't really do much. I took a similar shot like this in Hoboken in 2023. I'll probably feature it in a future slideshow presentation. And here's the observation car itself. It's named Hickory Creek. Now that I look at it, it looks a little bit like the last car in the Polar Express, doesn't it? And that's one of the locomotives in their storage line in the back. I think 7000 was kept on the Cape May Seashore line some time ago, because I remember seeing it there as a kid. We'll get back to the Cape May Seashore lines later on. Okay, we're in our next event. The last days in a summer haze. Now, like I said, the shots that you just saw were from last year's open house from the United Railroad Historical Society. A week before then, I went to Ocean City, New Jersey, just in time for the Jeep takeover. But that wasn't really my goal. Gillian's Wonderland, as you see here, was in its final days of operation, so I wanted to go down there and take a few photos before it closed down for good. But while I was there, couldn't help but snag a few pictures of the Jeeps. And these things were really decked out. I like the contrast. You have like Hello Kitty on the right, and then you have like this, I don't have the words, but you have this like really goth looking car in the left. And if you look in the top left, there's Bruce from Nemo. This was one of my favorites. I like old arcade games, and this one was decked out like Frogger. It even had little frogs on it. I don't know why. I'm not really a Jeep person, but I know a lot of people like to put rubber ducks on their Jeeps. But being as this was a frog themed car, this one had a lot of little rubber frogs on it. And there's the arcade game. Yeah, like I said, they had a lot of these cars were decked out inside and out. I like the seagulls there. And those came from Wildwood. Yes, the aliens arrived. No, they were just spectating. They didn't really hurt anyone. This was one of the locations along the Ocean City boardwalk. It was a laser maze. And here's the pirate at Castaway Cove. I like taking pictures of these little decorations and statues and whatnot. This summer, they actually installed a new pirate ship where the old one used to be. It's not the same as this one. It's actually in the main entrance where you walk in. The old one burnt down in 2021, so they replaced it and they just got the new one back up this summer. And back to the Jeeps. There's this one more that stood out to me. It was decorated as Jurassic Park. And look, the little plush T-Rex in the far right. And there he is. He was taking a stroll by the 7th Street surf shop. Don't say that 10 times fast. And you see the old Ferris wheel in the back. Which brings us to Gillian's. A week after it shut down, they took down all these spires and they took down the dragon and whatnot. So I'm glad I got pictures of it when I did. It goes to show you, sometimes as a photographer, if you see something, take a picture of it now because it may not be there later. And some of the rides at Gillian's, they do look a bit dated by today's standards, but still quite nice. And that Ferris wheel has such a commanding presence, and it still does. I know a lot of people want to preserve it, and to my knowledge, Ocean City hasn't decided what they want to do with the property yet. One of the roller coasters. And there's the fun slide. And in the lower right-hand corner, you have the little trains. You could ride those around the park. Kind of remind me of Thomas. Now, a lot of my shots have black and white versions, but while I was editing, I decided it would look good in like a vintage filter. Gives it like a retro 1970s, 80s, or 90s look. I did that for this shot as well. But with this shot, I also gave it the black and white treatment. There's the Ferris wheel. Usually people take a head-on shot, which I've done, and I don't mind, but On this particular day, I was feeling a little adventurous. So this side profile, I call it the pizza cutter angle. Walking outside, there's Gillian's. Someone once pointed out that this angle here looks like a frame out of Bob's Burgers, so I decided to try my hand at it. There's one of the other rides, the Frisbee. It wasn't running that day, but I could imagine it would have looked cool at night with all those incandescent bulbs lit up. I think that's it for Ocean City. Nope. Yeah, I saw these surfers here and I decided to take a few photos of the surfers. These photos got the black and white treatment as well. I also gave this one a little bit more of a vignette. And now we're on the Cape May Seashore lines. This was before I left Ocean City, or this was after I left Ocean City. I traveled south to Tuckahoe, and I wanted to check out the Cape May Seashore lines. They have former Pennsylvania Reading Seashore Lines locomotives and cars. They have one of them painted in the original Brunswick green color, and I wanted to see if that was there. Unfortunately, it wasn't, but I did see this Conrail RS3M. Looks a little bit worse for wear. Definitely doesn't look as nice as the 4208 that I showed earlier in the program. You could see the 8481 on the cab is bleeding through. That was its original identification number, road number. And there's the Conrail logo. I just had to give this the black and white treatment. And there are two of the three original PRSL locomotives. All of them are Class GP38-2 locomotives. I like this one. It kind of reminds me of a popsicle. And there's the other one. They picked these up from the GATX locomotive group, I think within the past couple years. There's the Pennsylvania Reading Seashore Lines logo on the locomotive I just showed. I think it was 2661. And that's the Cape Mays version of the logo. They have original Pennsylvania Railroad Class P70 coaches. They have a very they have a very classic look, especially with those porthole windows. And there's the historic Tuckahoe station. And our last topic for the night is Wildwood. I made 4 trips this summer. I'll be highlighting my most recent one. The last 2 visits that I did were mainly focused on night photography, but I did do some stuff during the day too. This was my first photo opportunity when I arrived. I wanted to get that yellow tram car by the Montego Bay, which is that big yellow building in the background. I somehow missed that opportunity the first two or three times, but I went back to Wildwood the fourth time, and I made it a point to get that shot. And look, he's even smiling for the camera. Now, a couple of these tram car drivers look familiar after like the fourth visit, and I'm sure they were like, "Oh, it's him again," because they saw me with the camera. I waved. I thought this was quite funny. It looks like the sea serpent took a bite out of that ship there. And there's the sea serpent roller coaster. Took a walk on the beach. There's the taxi stand, but I've never seen a taxi there. On the far left, it says "Beware of dog." I didn't want to take my chances, so I didn't go in. Now, this is an interesting shot. Normally, the water doesn't go all the way up there, but this was a couple days after Hurricane Erin, and they had some leftover flooding. I really wanted to get that beach chair in the foreground with the Maurice Pier, which is the amusement park, in the background. You could see the sea serpent looping around in the background too. And they have another beach chair, and that's the Great White in the background. That's the big wooden roller coaster. Now this shot, I raised my f-stop to 22 to get that sunburst effect. Another photographer who I was talking to recommended I do this shot. And you can see the shadow of the W there. Now, it looks a little wonky because I'm at the back of the sign. I couldn't get to the front, and I wanted to get the sun like directly overhead. So to make up for that, what I did, I just flipped the canvas there and I put a black and white filter on it. Here's one of the rides, the swings. And here's the Ferris wheel at sunset. They have a little main stage there, and they usually have someone performing there during the summer. Here's the sunset over Great White. If you look closely on the left, in the far left, you could see the roller coaster train. You could see it on the track there. I love that cotton candy sky. I think there are some seagulls overhead too. Then as it got darker, I took a couple of shots like this. This is my main goal while going out there. I wanted to try my hands at the boardwalk photography. I've been trying to get into it. I'm getting better, I think. There's the Adventure Pier. This is actually, I could be wrong, but I think this is also Maurice Pier, but this is their Adventure Pier. I really like the sign here. It reminds me of Indiana Jones. Grand Prix Raceway. I really like how I got the one go-kart in the foreground in the far left corner. The bottom left-hand corner, rather. I didn't stick around to see who won that. And then here we're back at the beach chair, and I got a nice reflection of the Ferris wheel there. Now that shot usually is impossible, but like I said, they had leftover flooding from Hurricane Erin, so provided a unique opportunity. Here's a perspective of the Ferris wheel looking up. And I said this about the Wonderland Ferris wheel earlier, and the same thing goes for the one at Maury's. It just has such a commanding presence. There's Mama's Kitchen next to a carousel. And I ended the night at Gateway 26, which is the casino and movie theater on the boardwalk. No, I think it's just a casino. And this is one of my favorite shots that I've taken all summer. Actually, it's one of my favorite boardwalk shots there. You see the neon sign, and you got the police officers there and everyone. And that wraps it up for this slideshow presentation.